Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel, the series about data engineering and data science within Microsoft Fabric. I'm your host Estera, and today Miguel joins us to continue discussing data flows within Microsoft Fabric. During the last episodes, Miguel discussed the role of data flows, the history, how it evolved from first generation to second generation. And the last episode was about different data destinations that you can use when you are designing your data flow. In this episode, we'll discuss getting most out of the staging mechanism. So basically, staging mechanism in details. Miguel, thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Thank you for having me.
So let's jump to the discussion and let's jump to the first question. During the last episode, you have mentioned about staging. Could you recall, and explain what is the staging mechanism about?
So in super simple terms, when you're creating a data flow, what you're doing with data preparation is that you're taking data from one point, it could be any data source, and then you're transforming the data. And you're using the Dataflow engine to transform that data, and then you can define to load that to a destination. So what happens is that in some cases, this process of taking the data from its origin and transforming it tends to go slow because of mechanism to send the data and then to transform it using the Power Query engine itself. Staging is imagined as this something in the middle that basically puts the data from your data source into this mechanism. In this case, it's going to be a Lakehouse. Puts it in the Lakehouse, and we can take advantage of all the optimizations that we have in the Lakehouse in terms of computing, in terms of resources, and everything that has to offer Fabric for this staging mechanism. So that things can actually scale and can run as fast as they possibly can. So that's overall how staging is defined, or it works in Dataflows Gen2.
That's great. Can you comment? Can you share some best practices for setting up a staging mechanism?
So the best thing that you can do when it comes down to staging itself is that you want to make sure that the data that you're getting from the data source doesn't go through the Power Query engine. So that's one of the first ones. If you can actually fold, and this is something that we can leave a link in the description. I think that we also left it in the previous video for understanding query evaluation and query folding. If you can just query exactly the data that you need from the data source in its raw form, and then staging that data and then doing the transformations afterwards, that will be best than first querying the data, transforming it with Power Query, and then loading into staging. But other than that, it's more of a case-by-case scenario in how you want to leverage staging mechanism. One of the common scenarios is, let's just say that you have one table that you're going to be reusing quite often, and you have multiple queries that depend on this single table, the single query. You can potentially stage it, and then every single other query that feeds from that one or has that dependency will probably run faster because they're not hitting the data source again. They're just consuming from this staging. So scenarios like that, where you know that you have one query or one table that's being consumed multiple times, will probably benefit quite a bit from staging.
Do we have a thumb rule how the staging mechanism is connected, related to data processing?
So we don't, at the moment, we try to abstract quite a bit so that it's easier for you to simply define that, hey, this is actually set to staging. This is only, you right-click a query, and then there's a simple check mark that you can define that this query will be set to staging. But beyond that, at the moment, we don't have many mechanisms to tell you how things are being staged. But since the data is being staged to a Lakehouse, you could potentially use the One Lake Explorer to see how the data is being staged to that staging Lakehouse.
I wonder how that impacts the data processing speed.
Yeah, so it does use the resources, so it does use the capacity. So you can probably check as well, how that's being used.
Got it. But in terms of processing data through data flows, we'll get acceleration, but at the same time, we'll use resources, our like capacity units for doing that exercise.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So, can you comment what are the common challenges in terms of using staging, setting staging, using staging? Is there any like some well-known limitations or like in general challenges that you see that customers with whom you are working with are facing?
So staging, even with other tools, just completely other tools, it's kind of one of those things that at first you're going to have to make some calculations, some math to really understand how much time you're actually evaluating that data flow and how much time you could potentially save by using staging. So by using staging, it might actually take more time to load the data to a staging that actually just processing everything without staging at all and just loading it to the final destination. Perhaps it would be best to do that approach, which is just ETL. In this case, the ETL means extract, transform, and load. By adding a layer of staging, we're basically doing an ELTL, which is extract, load to this destination, then transform it, and then load it to the final destination. So it does add some processing because we have to stage the data, of course. So it's more about making that. That's the main consideration that most folks have to make. Really, how much time I'm going to be saving, or if this is actually something that I should be using for really small batches of data. And if your data flow is at the moment is only taking just a few minutes to actually load everything and just to evaluate, perhaps staging at that point wouldn't be necessarily the best, but it could still be, save you some time. It really depends on how complex your query is, or your data flow completely.
Got it. In Fabric, we process structured and unstructured data. How staging works with those two types?
So for staging and just data flows in general, whenever we load data, it's always in a table format. So it's not a binary itself that we're saving, and we do have some considerations or limitations on what type of data types we can actually stage. So if you have a complex data type or structured data type, as we know in Power Query, like a table column or a list column or a record column or a binary column, you wouldn't be able to stage those. So just be aware of those. You can still transform that into a table format, scalar format. So it could be a column that you later expand to be multiple fields, or simply a simple column that you simply expand and it just becomes more rows. It's up to you, but that is one of the considerations that you have to make.
Got it. I would love to hear if you have any customer example when the staging has been discussed, and by enabling staging, the customer got the significant performance boost.
So we do quite a few, and it's typically with two scenarios: scenarios related to merging data, and scenarios related to append data. So let's just say that I could potentially set some queries that they contain a lot of data. They are quite voluminous, let's just say, call them that way. They're pretty wide, pretty tall. And what happens here is that if we didn't stage that data, it basically took 3 times as long to actually process the data. The moment that we enable for all of them to actually be staged before doing the final merge of all of those, it just made such a big impact. So whenever you have those situations where you have to merge, let's just say 5 queries together, or you have to merge 7 queries together, or 20 queries together, or append 20 queries together, those are the moments where you should consider using a staging, because you might actually benefit quite a bit from that mechanism. Apart from that, there are still some other scenarios where you can benefit from staging, because we can still use the compute engine that the Lakehouse provides or this staging actually provides. And but yeah, it's one of those that you should really give it a try.
Super. Thanks for sharing. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to hit the like button, click subscribe, and leave a comment, leave a question, leave a suggestion for the upcoming episodes. Now, after those 3 episodes about the data flow, definitely I want to try it. I want to do a hands-on and see how easily I can land the data inside Lakehouse. So until the next time, happy using of data flows. See you.